The night wrapped itself in silence, the only sound the soft hum of the refrigerator. In the dim glow of the living room, Nathan stared at his phone, scrolling aimlessly. His gaze was distant, lost in a sea of notifications. It was another quiet evening. A glass of scotch sat untouched beside him, the amber liquid reflecting the flickering light from the television. He could hear the soft click of his wife's heels against the hardwood floor in the hallway, the sound of her entering their apartment echoing from the foyer. She had promised to stay late at work again. The same old excuse. It wasn't unusual, but tonight something felt different. The air was thick with unease, as if the walls themselves were whispering secrets. Nathan's hand trembled as he reached for his phone, opening the messages between her and a name that he didn't recognize. The words were there, the ones she thought were hidden. His heart pounded in his chest, a rhythmic drumbeat that felt too loud for the room. He stared at the screen. "I'll make it worth your while, just like last time." Nathan's mind raced, every instinct screaming at him to stop. But he didn't. He couldn't. The betrayal was there in black and white. And it felt like everything he thought he knew was unraveling in an instant. Nathan's mind whirred as he scrolled through more messages. Each one felt like a knife twisting in his gut. His pulse quickened as he saw the words, "Can't wait to see you again." The pang of jealousy twisted deeper into his chest, and a strange sense of dread washed over him. He wanted to scream, confront her, but he didn't. Instead, he shoved the phone into his pocket as she entered the room. Her perfume filled the air, sweet, floral, familiar. But tonight, it felt like a foreign scent, a mask hiding something darker. She looked at him, smiled that smile that had always been reserved for him, but Nathan's eyes betrayed him. The silence between them stretched, thick and uncomfortable, as he waited for her to break it. And then, in a moment that changed everything, she whispered, "I didn't want to tell you this, but I've been seeing someone else." The world tilted. It wasn't just the messages anymore. It wasn't just a betrayal of trust. It was the unraveling of everything they had built. The calm of their marriage, the security, the safety gone. Her words hung in the air like a dark cloud, pressing down on Nathan. His mind struggled to process it, to make sense of the chaos that now defined his reality. As Nathan's wife retreated into the bedroom, Nathan's mind swirled with confusion and anger. He couldn't stay here anymore, not with the words she had just spoken hanging over him like a guillotine. His breath came in ragged gasps as he paced the apartment, the walls closing in. He needed to talk to someone. Anyone. He grabbed his jacket and stormed out the door. The night air was cold, biting. The streets of the city felt unfamiliar, and the usual hum of traffic seemed distant, as if the world was holding its breath. He reached the bar on the corner, a place he used to go to unwind after work. The neon sign flickered, casting an eerie glow onto the cracked sidewalk. Inside, the dim lighting and the hum of conversations did little to settle Nathan's nerves. He didn't want to be here, but he had nowhere else to go. At the bar, a man in a dark coat sat alone, nursing a drink. He turned slowly as Nathan approached, his eyes meeting Nathan's with a knowing, almost predatory gaze. There was something about the man that didn't sit right with Nathan. His eyes held too many secrets. "Bad night?" the man asked, his voice smooth and calm. Nathan didn't answer. He just stared, his heart racing. This man, this stranger, was the only person in the world who could possibly understand. The city felt colder now. Nathan walked the streets like a man on the edge, everything around him heightened, colors brighter, sounds sharper. The woman he thought he knew had become a stranger. Every corner of their apartment now felt like a maze, every object a potential reminder of the betrayal he couldn't shake. His mind raced, replaying her words, her voice still lingering in his ears like an unbearable static hum. He tried to return to his normal life, the one before everything had come undone, but nothing felt normal anymore. He went through the motions, showing up to work, answering emails, but his thoughts were elsewhere, on her, on the man in the bar, on what this new truth meant. There were moments fleeting but intense, where he thought he might be able to leave, to escape it all. But that thought was fleeting. Nathan found himself at the same bar again the next evening, though he wasn't sure why. The man with the predatory eyes was there, too, sitting in the same spot as before. The man's gaze met his again, and without a word, Nathan slid onto the stool beside him. The air between them crackled with unspoken understanding. The man didn't ask if Nathan was all right, he didn't need to. Nathan's exhaustion, the deep emotional fatigue, said more than words ever could. The man leaned in slightly, his voice barely a whisper. "If you want to find out what she's hiding, you'll need to look closer than you ever have before." The words hit Nathan like a thunderclap. The offer was clear: dive deeper, expose everything, or leave it all behind. Nathan wasn't sure if he could walk away anymore. As Nathan left the bar, the man's words echoed in his head. Look closer. It was an impossible task. What did it even mean to look closer? How could he possibly get past the lies, the deception, the mask his wife had so carefully crafted over the years? The questions gnawed at him like hunger, relentless and insatiable. The next day, Nathan found himself back at the apartment, staring at his wife's things, the small trinkets she had left scattered around. The scent of her perfume lingered in the air. It felt like a sick joke now. The woman who had once been his confidant, his anchor, was now someone he didn't even recognize. He had to find answers, but not alone. Nathan knew he couldn't do this by himself. He reached out to someone from his past, a former colleague named Sarah. She had always been good at reading people, and if anyone could help him piece together the puzzle, it was her. The reunion was awkward at first. There was a distance between them now, the years that had passed, the different lives they led. But Sarah, after a long pause, agreed to help. She didn't ask too many questions. She just nodded and said, "Let's find out what she's really been up to." Together, they began to dig through the clues, the subtle signs, the small inconsistencies in her behavior. But even as they uncovered more, something dark and dangerous began to rise in Nathan's chest. The more he uncovered, the more he wondered if he even wanted to know the truth. The path ahead felt increasingly like a descent, and Sarah's involvement was both a comfort and a complication. The deeper Nathan and Sarah delved into the web of lies, the more it cost Nathan. The revelation that his wife's affair had been going on for months was just the beginning. Each new fact, each discovery felt like a weight sinking deeper into his chest. The messages, the phone calls, the secret trips, all of it painted a picture of someone he didn't know. His wife wasn't the person he'd married. She wasn't the person he'd loved. Nathan's world, once simple, now felt like a shattered mirror, fractured and distorted, each piece reflecting a different version of reality. He had always thought he knew who she was. But now, he didn't even know who he was anymore. Late one night, as Sarah went through the phone records, she found something strange: a text message sent from his wife's phone to a number that was mysteriously unlisted. Nathan felt a cold chill sweep over him. The text was brief, but it sent a shiver down his spine. It's done. We're moving forward. There was no mistaking it now. The betrayal wasn't just physical. It was calculated, planned. It wasn't just an affair. It was something much bigger. And Nathan's mind, already stretched thin, finally snapped. This wasn't just about his marriage anymore. This was about exposing a secret, one that could tear apart more than just his life. The following days blurred together. Each moment Nathan spent in his apartment, digging through files, phone records, and receipts, pushed him closer to the edge. The weight of it all crushed him. The life he had known, the love he had believed in, was slipping away, like sand through his fingers. The more Sarah helped him, the more he realized that the secrets weren't just with his wife. They ran deeper, much deeper. One evening, as Nathan flipped through an old photo album, trying to hold on to the memories of a time when things made sense, Sarah called. Her voice was steady, but there was a tremor in it. "I found something. You need to come over." Nathan felt his stomach drop. It wasn't just about his wife anymore. There was something far darker at play. He arrived at Sarah's apartment, his mind racing, his heart pounding in his chest. Sarah sat at her desk, a stack of papers before her, her eyes locked onto something she didn't want to show him. "Look at this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She pushed a folder toward him. Inside were copies of emails, invoices, and documents, each one showing transactions that were too carefully hidden. His wife's affair wasn't just a secret relationship. It was part of a much larger conspiracy. The names, the organizations, the hidden accounts, everything pointed to a shadowy figure Nathan had never heard of. His wife had been involved in something dangerous, something criminal. The walls had been closing in around him for months, but now, it wasn't just about betrayal. It was about survival. His wife hadn't just lied to him. She had pulled him into a web that was bigger than either of them could have imagined. Nathan stood frozen, staring at the web of lies and deceit in front of him. His wife had never been who he thought she was, but now he was faced with an even harder truth. The woman he loved, his partner, was just involved in an affair. She had been orchestrating something far more dangerous. And Nathan, by being married to her, had become entangled in it. The choice lay before him: expose her, destroy everything they had built, and risk his own safety in the process. Or walk away, leave it all behind, and pretend none of this had ever happened. But the weight of what he had uncovered wouldn't let him go. He couldn't walk away. Not when his life had been shattered in ways he couldn't even begin to comprehend. That night, he returned home, the apartment cold and unwelcoming. His wife was there, sitting on the couch, looking at her phone, just as she had every other night. She didn't even look up when he entered. Nathan's heart raced as he stood in the doorway, the folder heavy in his hands. The silence between them felt like a physical presence, oppressive and suffocating. He knew what he had to do. The confrontation would come, the truth would be laid bare. But how could he destroy everything he had ever loved? How could he bring down the woman who was once his world? The choice wasn't just about her. It was about him. And in that moment, he wasn't sure if he even knew who he was anymore. The tension in the apartment was unbearable. Nathan could feel the walls closing in around him, the weight of his decision pressing down on him with every breath. He sat there, the folder in his lap, his mind a storm of confusion and rage. His wife had done something unforgivable. The betrayal had cut deeper than anything he could have imagined. But now, the truth had taken on a different form. It wasn't just about cheating. It was about something bigger, something far more dangerous. He stood up suddenly, the floor creaking beneath his feet, the decision made. He walked over to his wife, who was still lost in her phone, unaware of the storm that was about to hit her. Without a word, Nathan slammed the folder down on the table in front of her. She looked up, her face unreadable. She saw the folder, saw the documents, and for the first time, fear flashed across her face. "You're done," Nathan said, his voice low and steady. The words felt like acid in his mouth, burning as he spoke them. "I know everything. And I'm not going to let this go. You're not the woman I thought you were. And I'm done pretending." Her eyes widened, but she didn't speak. The silence between them was more deafening than any words could have been. Nathan had crossed the line. There was no going back now. The world he had known was gone, replaced by a fractured, ugly truth. The man he had been before this moment was gone. And the man he would become, he wasn't sure yet. Days passed in a strange quiet. The apartment felt emptier now, more silent than ever. Nathan wandered through the space, haunted by the echoes of his own footsteps. He couldn't shake the image of his wife's face, her eyes wide with fear as the truth of her betrayal hung heavy between them. Yet, as the tension mounted, a deep part of him wondered if he had done the right thing. The world outside seemed distant, like he was trapped in a parallel reality where nothing made sense anymore. In the evenings, Nathan would sit by the window, the cool night air brushing against his skin. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't focus. His thoughts kept drifting back to the man at the bar, the one who had offered him the dangerous path. He had pulled Nathan deeper into this mess, yet Nathan couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that the man knew more than he was letting on. The sense of unease grew with each passing day, and Nathan couldn't help but feel that the storm was far from over. The confrontation with his wife hadn't solved anything, it had only deepened the mystery. What if there was more to the conspiracy, more secrets lurking just beneath the surface? He needed answers, but to find them, he knew he had to take the next step. The decision had been made. He would follow the breadcrumbs, no matter where they led. It wasn't about his marriage anymore. It was about uncovering the truth and confronting the darkness head-on. And yet, a part of him, the part that still clung to the life he had lost, begged him to turn back. The man at the bar had been right. The deeper Nathan dug, the darker the path became. He had followed the trail of documents, messages, and invoices, each piece leading him further into a labyrinth of corruption and betrayal. But there was a key piece he hadn't noticed before, a name, hidden in plain sight, that tied everything together. It was an old contact, someone his wife had known years ago, before their marriage. Nathan found the address, an old warehouse on the outskirts of the city, far from the reach of prying eyes. It was here that the last piece of the puzzle would fall into place. When Nathan arrived, the scene before him was almost surreal. The warehouse loomed in the distance, its dark silhouette against the skyline. The air was thick with the scent of oil and rust, and the ground beneath his feet felt like it hadn't been disturbed in years. It was the perfect place for secrets to fester. He stepped inside cautiously, the door creaking open behind him. The lights were dim, casting long shadows over the forgotten machinery and piles of discarded equipment. In the far corner, he could make out two figures, his wife, standing with the same man who had pulled him into this nightmare. The man's eyes met Nathan's, cold and calculating. His wife didn't even look up. The silence between them was unbearable. Nathan's heart pounded in his chest as he walked closer, his every step echoing in the cavernous space. The confrontation he had been avoiding was now inevitable. The man spoke first, his voice low and dangerous. "You've been digging, Nathan. But you don't know what you've gotten yourself into." Nathan's jaw clenched. "I know enough," he replied, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. "It's over." But as the words left his mouth, something shifted. His wife, who had remained silent, finally looked up, and in her eyes, Nathan saw a flash of fear. The veil had lifted, and the truth was now exposed. But the price for knowing too much had already been set. The confrontation had been inevitable, but nothing could have prepared Nathan for what came next. The man's words struck a deep chord within him, but it was his wife's eyes, her silent confession, that cut the deepest. She hadn't been just an unwilling accomplice. She had been part of it from the start. The secretive meetings, the coded messages, the lies, they weren't just a betrayal. They were a carefully calculated part of a much larger plan. The realization hit Nathan like a freight train. This wasn't just about love. It wasn't even about revenge. This was about survival. His wife had been using him, manipulating him to cover up her involvement in something far more dangerous. She had dragged him into this, and now, there was no escaping the consequences. In that moment, Nathan knew what he had to do. The man's words had made it clear, there was only one way out. The truth would cost him everything, his marriage, his safety, his peace of mind, but it was the only way to stop the dark forces closing in on them. With a heavy heart, Nathan made his decision. He turned his back on his wife, walked toward the door, and left the warehouse. The shadows of the city swallowed him whole as he disappeared into the night. There was no going back now. The man, his wife, and everything they had built together would remain behind. Nathan had stepped into a new world, a world where truth, betrayal, and sacrifice defined every step he would take from this moment forward. Nathan wandered through the city, lost in a fog of disbelief and exhaustion. The weight of his decisions pressed down on him, each step feeling heavier than the last. He had walked away from everything, his wife, his life, and even his own sense of self. The dark truth of their marriage, the betrayal, the lies, it all felt like a bad dream. But it wasn't a dream. It was reality. And now he was living in it. As he walked the empty streets, the cold night air biting at his skin, Nathan's thoughts kept circling back to that moment, the moment he had turned his back on everything he had once held dear. He hadn't known what he would feel when it was over, but now, with the streets empty and the city silent, he was filled with an overwhelming sense of loss. It wasn't just his wife he had lost, it was the man he thought he was. The man who trusted, who loved without question, who believed in the good in people. That man no longer existed. He found himself standing outside the same bar where it all began. The neon sign flickered above him, casting an eerie glow on the sidewalk. Nathan walked inside, not for solace, but for something to fill the silence. The bartender, recognizing him, poured a drink without a word. Nathan sat in the same spot as before, alone, just as he had always been, but now there was a hollowness inside him. The night felt endless, as if time itself had stopped. The drink burned his throat, but it didn't numb the ache in his chest. He had made his choice, and now, there was no turning back. The city outside seemed to close in around him, each building, each street corner a reminder of everything he had lost. Weeks passed, but Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. The apartment, once full of life and memories, now felt like an empty shell. He had packed up his things and moved to a new place, but it was never really his home. Nothing ever felt right anymore. He tried to fill the void with work, with distractions, but nothing worked. The phone calls, the texts from unknown numbers, he ignored them, thinking they were part of the mess he had left behind. But one day, the message came again, "You're not done." The past has a way of catching up. The sender was anonymous, the message cryptic, but it sent a chill down Nathan's spine. He realized then that he would never truly escape the shadows of his past. The darkness he had uncovered was far-reaching, and it wasn't going to let him go. The conspiracy, the betrayal, the lies, it had all been bigger than he had ever imagined. And the truth was, no matter how far he ran, it would always be there, just out of reach, waiting to pull him back in. Nathan's phone buzzed again. This time, he picked it up. The message was clear: "We need to meet." The past wasn't over. It was only just beginning. Nathan stood on the balcony of his new apartment, the city sprawling beneath him, stretching endlessly into the horizon. The lights twinkled below, like a sea of stars trapped in the concrete. For the first time in weeks, he felt something that resembled peace. It wasn't much, but it was something. The wind tugged at his jacket as he took a deep breath. He had learned the hard way that the world wasn't as simple as he had once believed. People weren't just good or bad, they were messy, complicated, and full of secrets. He wasn't the same man who had walked into that bar months ago. He had been changed by everything he had uncovered, but in the end, it was his choice that mattered. As the city continued to buzz beneath him, Nathan felt a quiet resolve settle in. The truth, however painful, had set him free. And as for the future, he wasn't sure where it would take him. But for the first time in a long while, he was no longer running. The phone buzzed again, but this time, Nathan didn't pick it up. He had let the past go. And with it, the shadows that had once ruled his life.